In 1976, 12 children vanished during recess at St. Alora's Catholic school. None were ever found. Their coats remained on hooks, lunchboxes untouched, the playground still echoing with laughter no one heard. 42 years later, during demolition, workers unearthed a sealed concrete wall covered in dozens of tiny handprints pressed from the inside. One set was fresher than the rest, still warm. Fingers curled as if scratching to get out. If you hear knocking after midnight, don't answer. One of them still thinks it's recess. The building creaked, but the swing never moved. She didn't remember choosing to return, only that her shoes stuck slightly as she crossed the lobby, like the wax on the floor had learned how to breathe. The air tasted closed, paper, rot, iron, something sweet that shouldn't be. Cora kept her badge in her pocket. No one checked. The reception glass was smeared with sun-aged tape and something dried to a flake. No receptionist, just that high, almost mechanical hum from the basement ventsan, old drone she remembered as a child. Louder at night, always slightly off-pitch. Her name was never in the ledgers. It had been typed once. Black ribbon, faded, then gone. They told her it was downsizing. A laugh echoed behind the concrete, clipped too short. The elevator hadn't worked in years, but the ding still happened. Sometimes, like a gesture or a dare, she took the stairs. They were the same. Half-peeled safety paint on the edges. Cold, even in July. Her hand traced the railing, then stopped. A handprint, greasy, wrong height. She stared. It hadn't been there before. Not that it mattered. They cleaned every Friday. They said it. Like gospel. The custodial team had all vanished 1 June. Said they transferred. Said their names had never been listed. Floor 4, where the records used to be. The hall was dim. Not dark light filtered through old mesh glass, and a door cracked open just enough to spill yellow across a warped tile. She remembered that door. Had no handle. Her foot brushed something soft. She looked down. A child's shoe, folded inward, dry mudded, laces stiff with time. She didn't pick it up. Not yet. Inside the room, everything leaned slightly right. Filing cabinets open like mouths. No dust, but the smell of dust coated her throat. Papers had been left too neatly, as if someone had stopped in the middle of disappearing them. One drawer was open 2 inches wider than the rest. Too exact, she pulled it. There shouldn't have been a drawer there. It was welded shut in 91. Everyone knew. She remembered hearing them argue in the hallway after Miss Langford fainted reading something from it. Cora had been 9. Her memory, apparently, was unstable back then. Inside, one file, sealed. Red tape, frayed. On the cover, not her name, but her handwriting. Her old signature. Below it, observation logs, 1987 to 1992. She turned the first page. No words. Just a photo, paper-clipped. Grainy, warped color. A group of children standing beneath the oak tree behind the school annex. The leaves were turning. She counted 7. One of them was her. Back row striped sweater, gapped tooth grin. She did not remember smiling. The child beside her she froze. The girl in the middle was blurred, not by motion. The face was smeared, thumbed across the emulsion like someone had tried to erase only her. And beneath the smear, faintly visible in biro ink, Marley 7, always. Sings alone. She remembered Marley's song. A lullaby from nowhere. No words, just melody. Cora had asked her where she learned it. Marley had only said, "You'll remember after." She turned the page. More photos. Names. Each child gone. Dates ending in spring. No cause of exit. Only notations. Floor redacted, transferred, unconfirmed, confirmed. No. C room for C. She looked up. Room for C was across the hall, still sealed with tape that had browned to brittle skin. Condemned storage, authorized entry only, but the tape had been sliced, not peeled. A hymn page was caught under the door, burnt at one edge. She reached for the handle. The door opened before she touched it. The room was colder. Not from air temperature, had nothing to do with it. Light flickered through a broken window blind. Something buzzed behind the wall, almost too soft to register. The walls were lined with mirrors, all mismatched, some cracked, some too new, none correct. One reflected her at 16, another 30. The third didn't reflect her at all, just the room. No figure. She moved closer. The mirror on the far left. Her breath fogged it, but she hadn't exhaled. The fog lingered. Then words appeared in the condensation. Slow, shaking, stayed to long. She backed away. Her foot hit something. She turned. A photo, burnt at the top. She bent. It was a classroom. Old desks. A chalkboard that read, "Welcome back, Cora," in slanted cursive. Marley sat in the front, alone. The clock read 2:17, the same time as now. Cora dropped the photos. She left the room. The hallway had changed, shorter somehow, the light wrong, a flicker every third second, like breath. She walked quickly. Her fingers brushed the wall hairline crack. It moved under her hand. Not just spidering dash migrating. Voices now, whispered, distant but circling. She came back. She didn't forget. They always come back. Her hands shook. She reached the stairwell, descended. The basement door was ajar. A thin line of red exit light flickered on something metal inside. A cabinet to clean. Industrial, locked with a code. She didn't remember the numbers. Her hand typed them anyway. 0217, the lock clicked. Inside one object, a mirror handheld. Antique, cracked into 7 rays from a center point. Her initials carved on the back. She remembered breaking it. A fight with her sister. She remembered crying, but she was an only child. She dropped the mirror. The sound echoed. Wrong, long, like it hit a void instead of concrete. She backed away. Something shifted behind her. A hiss, no, a breath. She turned too fast. The wall was smooth, but something had changed. A name tag, half embedded in drywall. Metal rusted to green dot. Marley, the letters etched in. She reached out. The wall exhaled behind her. A voice she remembered from no throat. You said you'd stay. Cora didn't scream. She walked backward, up the stairs. Her hand gripped the railing, smeared now with something darker than grease. Her palm fit perfectly. The lobby again. A woman at the front desk, pale, smile to still. Can I help you, miss? Cora stared. I used to go here. The woman tilted her head. There's no record of that, I'm afraid. I was in the files. Room 4. There is no room 4. Cora stepped back. Then where did I just come from? The woman's smile never changed. You've been here the whole time. Behind her, a laugh, childlike, too close. The sound of a swing creaking where there was no playground. Cora ran. Outside, the air didn't move. Not even the leaves. The sky looked older than when she'd entered. in the glass beside the front door. Her reflection wasn't hers. She looked 7 and smiling. The photo she'd dropped reappeared in her pocket, now unburnt. She opened it. 7 children again, herself, in the middle this time. Marley gone. But someone had scratched a name beneath her image in raw black ink. Maya Louisa. Wind didn't blow. The swing still creaked, and somewhere behind the drywall, something listened. The building creaked, but the swing never moved. The hallway. Lights stuttered overhead, but only when she stopped walking. Her steps made no sound anymore, not on this floor. The tiles felt soft under her soles, like they were covered in felt or something too thin to be carpet. It wasn't how she remembered. Alina had never meant to come back. That wasn't the plan. It wasn't even a plan. She had been driving past, then slowing, then turning in without blinking. Some roads took the steering. Some buildings pulled. The school was supposed to be empty. Demolished in 94. She had the article printed in a file in her bagblack white photo. Red marker circling the name Brookvale Primary Annex. But the building still stood. Windows unbroken, blinds drawn, doors closed in that waiting. She didn't unlock it. The front door opened before her key touched the metal. The entry smelled like juice boxes and mop water. Something low sweet like apples steeped in mildew. The front office glass was cracked. Behind it, a nameplate she hadn't read in 30 years. Miss R. Candler, attendance. No one sat behind the desk, but a teacup still steamed dot down the main corridor. Lockers had all been painted shut. The blue bubbled away from the seams. One locker door had split open. She looked reflexively, but there was only a single item inside. A child's shoe. Small, dirt still packed in the tread. Untied laces. She backed away. Something in her chest was ticking again. That old fear, not panic reminder. The air was watching her. The coat room was at the end of the East Hall, behind the gymnasium that no longer appeared on any map. She passed room 5A, door half open. No sound. A hymn page lay torn and pressed against the window, barely clinging to the tape. She didn't look inside. The door to the coat room stuck. She had to press her shoulder into it. When it gave, it wasn't from faucet, just released inside. The row 12 hooks. 12 coats she counted twice. All hung neatly. No dust. The wool still soft. Colors barely faded. One still had a plastic frog keychain clipped to the zipper. Another had Nina stitched into the collar. In pink thread, Alina had sat next to Nina. That girl never came back from recess. The teachers told them she'd moved away. But her coat was here. Alina stepped inside. She hadn't remembered it being this quiet. The kind of quiet that pushes back. Her own breath scratched. When she touched the coats, they felt warm. Not just warm recent. Like a child had just stepped out of it to answer roll call. The smell of apple juice was stronger now. She turned. A mirror hung opposite the hooks. She didn't remember a mirror. It reflected her, but not now. Not 35, 11. A girl in a yellow coat stood behind her in the mirror. There was no one behind her in the room. She didn't turn. She see OULD. And single quotes, too. The girl lifted a hand and pressed it to the glass. A breath fogged the mirror, but only. On the inside, the coat-room door creaked. Alina turned, too fast. No one there. The door was ajar now. Letting in a slice of white light from the hallway, she turned back. One coat was gone. Hook 12. Empty. She stepped back. Something crunched under her heel. Paper. She bent, a burnt photo. Curled at the edges. 12 children, blurred, standing beneath a chalkboard that read "Welcome to Room 3B." In that old looping cursive.11, faces visible, one blacked out. She was there, Alina, third from the left, wearing the coat that hung second from the right. But in the photo, that coat was red. Here, it was blue. She flipped it over. The back was blank, no date, no names. She heard a drawer slide open. Not in this room. Nearby she tucked the photo into. Her coat, the adjacent storage room, wasn't supposed to exist. It had been bricked over decades ago, but now the door was ajar. No doorknob, just a slit of light. She approached. Inside, rows of filing cabinets. Some open, some welded shut. The light came from a ceiling bulb that shouldn't be working. A hairline crack ran along the floor, twitching faintly, as if it followed her breath. On the far cabinet, one drawer open. Labels scraped away. Inside, hymn fragments, receipts, Polaroids, half-redacted reports, typed in all caps, missing dates. One file stamped, recess hold, none-released. She opened it. Inside 12 names. One line for each coat. Nina, Cam, Elspeth, Margot, Riley, Jonah, Sam, Desi, Leo, Tess, Aislinn, her name, Alina Yates, underlined in pencil. Then crossed out next to it. Exit attempted. Hold failed. Return unknown. Her hands shook the duct above. Her head rattled. Not like a vent kicking on, like movement. She looked up. A voice whispered, distant hoarse, with the effort of shaping human words. Recess is almost over. She slammed the file shut. The light flickered, went out. She stumbled. Back into the coat room. The mirror was broken now, not shattered, split, down the center. Each side reflected something else. The left, the coat room as it was. The right, the coat room with 12 children hanging up their coats. Slowly, silently, all facing the wall. One child turned, looked at her, same yellow coat. No face. It lifted. Its hand behind her, a breath, not her own. She turned. The 12th coat was back, but it was wet, dripping. She didn't touch it. The coat next to it moved, slight sway. Just enough. A small handprint bloomed on the wall. Beside it, too low to belong to her. She backed out of the room. The hallway was longer than before. Lights all on, all humming at slightly different pitches. She passed room 5A again. The hymn page was gone. Inside, the chairs were all facing the chalkboard now. On the board, recess is almost over. Written 12 times in red marker. The last line smeared by a child's palm. Her heart raced. She ran, back to the front. The main door was locked now. No handle, no exit. The teacup behind the glass was still steaming. A woman stood behind the desk. Same glasses. Same pinched smile. "Can I help you, miss?" I used to go here." "No, dear," the woman said, with a tilt of her head that wasn't kind. "You stayed." Alina stepped back. The mirror behind the desk fogged. "Recess is almost over." The duct whispered again. Closer now, inside the walls. She turned. The hallway stretched impossibly long behind her. At the very end, a door slowly opening, coats visible through the crack. One fell to the ground. She remembered now, not just the faces, the feel of the coat on her skin, the sound of Nina crying as they were told to line up, the lie about juice breaks. She remembered trying to leave, the punishment. The room without windows. Her signature on the ledger they made her sign after. Her name on the wrong date. Elena Yates, do not release. She dropped the burnt photo. It uncurled itself on the tile. The missing child was visible now, wearing her coat, wearing her face. 12 hooks, 12 coats. The air changed warm, welcoming, welcoming, like something had finished waiting. The duct hummed again, words sharper now. Recess is almost over. The hallway didn't end where it used to. There should have been a supply closet beside the fire door. But now there was just the sound chalk dragging over slate, soft and slow. No rhythm, no sentence. Madeline stopped walking. No one else was on the floor. The other teachers had cleared out years ago, long before the final bell even rang. District consolidation, they called it. Emergency budget cuts. But she remembered the real word used once, before the office replaced it in memos with silence. Containment. She turned left. Room 6B was sealed, of course. Caution tape pulled taut, but not printed, not branded. Just a yellow strip marked in grease pencil, do not open, do not ask. It had been like that since 1991. She was 12 then. She'd been in the room the day they shut it. She remembered the sound it made. Not locked, sealed. A breath held. Now, 3 decades later, the tape wasn't stuck to anything. It hung limp, as if peeled back and then gently pressed back into place. The wood frame of the door still had the child's scratchings carved along the bottom edge. Tally marks, 12 sets of 5, then a single vertical slash on its own. A pause. She touched the handle. Cold. The smell came first. Chalk, mold, wet. Pages, forgotten names, rotting like fruit skin. The door opened half an inch. Before catching, she pushed. It gave. Not like wood should, like flesh. The classroom was intact. Desks still aligned in semi-rows. Board clean. A bookshelf had fallen over in the corner, but none of the books had spilled. Each still stacked like a breath stopped in the middle of rising. Madeline stepped inside. The air changed behind her, closed. She didn't look back. She scanned the room. Something was wrong with the light bright, but as if cast from a window that no longer existed. No dust floated. The chairs were too still. Her own breath fogged in front of her for one moment, then vanished. She walked to the far wall. A mirror hung there now. No frame, just glass, bolted. She saw herself, but not in her clothes. She was in uniform, green plaid skirt, white collar. Her childhood hair. But the face wasn't 12. It was now. The version of her in the mirror blinked once, then lifted a hand. A breath fogged the glass, but she hadn't exhaled. Behind her, in the reflection, a drawer opened. A drawer that didn't exist in this room. She turned. There it was, now. 4th desk, back. Left side, drawer open, waiting. She walked slowly, inside yearbooks. 1987 through 1991. Pages torn out. Photos warped with moisture and something darker. Her fingers trembled as she opened the 1989 edition, page 42, 6B, class. Photo, she stared. The girl in the center, smiling to wide, appeared again, 2 rows back. Half obscured by another child's shoulder. Same dress. Same tilt of the head. Not twins, a double. She flipped to the previous year. Same girl. Again, twice. Then again, in 1991, smiling in 2 places. Every time, more faded, less sharp, but still there. Madeline didn't remember her name. No one ever said it after, but she remembered the girl's voice, high, off, like it echoed before it left her throat. You'll forget until I ask again, the girl had said. Madeline closed the book. The chalk sound returned. Behind her now, the board was covered in writing. She hadn't heard the chalk fall, every line, do not erase, all the way down the slate. In the corner, a child's shoe sat upside down, toe blackened like it had been burned. She picked it up. It was hers, from the fire drill that wasn't a drill. The one in October, the one where she tripped and someone had said, just keep going. But no one was behind her when she looked. The school never admitted the alarms had gone off. The file in the nurse's office had been blank when she checked. She placed the shoe back down. A sound behind the wall. Paper tearing. She moved to the back of the classroom. A cabinet she didn't remember existed was half open. No lock, just slats of wood. She opened it. Inside, file folders, brittle, dozens, all labeled in red pencil. 6B reassessment, 6B rewrite, 6B-return. She opened the first, a class list. 13 names, one redacted entirely, one crossed out in black graphite below, the phrase handwritten removed. Still present, the rest of the names had annotations. Absent but recorded, recorded but unseen, unseen but retained. Madeline's name was there next to hers, present, memory fractured, needs reinforcement. She dropped the file. The room shifted. The walls weren't the same. On the right, a hairline crack moved across the paneling like a vein surfacing through skin. She backed up. Her heel struck something soft. Another yearbook, burnt at the corner. She picked it up. The pages fanned open. Every photo was wrong. Cropped too wide in the background of each. A hand, a finger, a flash of yellow fabric. A face turned just too far to see. One girl. Always just too many times. Madeline flipped faster. The same girl again. Page after page. Always there. Always almost gone. The photos got blurrier. Then clearer again. Then a full page. Spread, not school-related. A photo she didn't remember posing. 4. A classroom-empty. 12 desks. One chair in the corner, turned backward. A mirror reflecting a girl standing in the hall. Not entering. Just watching. It was her. The reflection was her. But she hadn't taken this picture. She dropped the book. The lights flickered, buzzed, dimmed. The mirror on the wall now showed the room filled with children. All seated, all perfectly still, all. Looking forward, one turned, smiled, same girl. From every photo. From both places, her lips moved in the reflection. Madeline stepped forward. No sound, then dash from behind the mirror, as if from deep ductwork. You came back late. You owe us time. She turned to run. The door was gone, or rather, no longer open. Just walls smoothed over, painted the same tally marks carved into the plaster. But one more slash had been added. 13-something knocked from behind the cabinet, slow repeating like a Colland response, like recess was over. She moved to the window, tried to force it. Only glass, no view, just her own reflection again aged. Backward now. 12, in uniform, holding a book. The title, Returnees. Room 6B. She mouthed the words. She didn't mean to. Her breath fogged the glass and left the words behind. You stayed too long. She turned in panic. One desk drawer, center row, was open now. Inside, a hymn torn from the old chapel books. She knew the one. They sang it every Monday before math. It had no melody, just notes that felt too held. She touched it, beneath it. The list, the original list. 13 names, one redacted, one erased so cleanly the paper was smooth, but still crossed out. She read them all, the last one her own, crossed out after being erased, and in new, fresh ink, someone had written, "Do not record again." Room closed, memory looped. Madeline stared. Then she heard it, from the duct above, cold, whispered, like the others. But closer now, knowing you've been here twice. The room didn't move, the names didn't change, but her own hand was holding the burnt yearbook again, and, this time, she saw herself in 3 places. She found the first tape in a drawer that shouldn't have existed, the filing cabinet in the records. Wing was welded shut, had been. Now the seam gaped slightly, edges peeled back like metal had tried to forget how to hold shape. Dust coated every other drawer, but this one was clean, freshly touched, or freshly opened. Lydia didn't remember requesting the archives. The basement wasn't listed on the new plans. The ledger she'd signed to gain access had no page number. The custodian who handed her the key wasn't on payroll. And still, the drawer opened. Inside, a cassette, black plastic, white tape along the edge, handwritten in thick pencil, Magdalene tape 7. She pocketed it. There were no other tapes in that cabinet. No papers either. Only a child's mitten wool, red, matted with something grey and old. She didn't touch it. She left the drawer open. Some doors forget to close, if you ask too much of them. The player was in the chapel's back room. She remembered it from field mass boxed in mahogany, a little plastic cross melted into the speaker grill. The nuns used to record hymns onto reel and tape when the choir was too small. That year, the choir had vanished one by one until only Magdalene was left. No one questioned it. She said they'd been moved to a convent in Westbridge, but the children whispered they were moved underground. The player took the cassette. The gears caught, spun slow, then hissed, nothing at first. Then her voice, not a sermon, not a hymn, whispered ragged. I kept them quiet. I kept them cold. They asked for music and I gave them stillness. The silence made them smaller. Lydia froze. The air in the chapel felt wrong. Not cold, pressed, like something listening from inside the wood grain. The tape crackled again, soft. Humming now, a hymn, almost, but the notes bent, unfinished, a chord that never resolved. She pressed pause. Outside the chapel window, something moved, a shadow on the glass. Then gone. She pressed play again. They bled to icily. The small ones always do. I kept the ledgers clean. No sin if there's no record. Lydia stood, the window fogged. She looked no one, no breath but hers. But the fog wrote back, still. Here the player clicked. Another voice layered underneath. Thinner, younger, repeating, barely audible beneath the static. Not her voice, not her voice. She ejected the tape, but the player didn't stop. The reel kept. Spinning, she pulled the plug. Still spinning, the drawer below the altar slid open. She hadn't touched it. Inside, more tapes, all numbered out of order. 2, 5, 9, 13. Each labeled, "Do not play alone." One had her name on it. She didn't remember ever being recorded. She picked it up. It was warm. She turned to leave. but the chapel doors were shut. She hadn't closed them. Her footsteps echoed now, once, then again. But not matching her pace, she stepped. A beat later, another. From the ceiling, or the walls, or below, the far hallway light blinked. Just once, she went back to the archive. The hallway didn't match her memory. She counted 6 doors. There should have been, for she tried the third soundproofed room, padded walls, an old mirror on the far side. Inside, she saw herself, but a version of her that hadn't aged past 17. Holding the same tape, the mirror fogged. Slowly, deliberately, play. Mine, next. She stepped back. The door behind her creaked no. One, she went to the last room. The basement stairwell beyond it was black. No switches, no signs, just stairs. She descended. The smell changed, chalk and mildew. A sharper edge beneath it, photographic. Chemicals, the kind they'd used in the old darkroom. At the bottom, a soundproof booth. Glass cracked at the corner. Inside, an old nun's habit hung on a mannequin torso. No head. The fabric twitched slightly in a breeze that didn't exist. On the table, a hymnal torn. Page 34, missing. Underneath, another cassette. This one labeled only, final. She picked it up, her fingers stung. Like touching ice that remembers heat, she brought it back upstairs. The player started before she could insert the tape. Don't. Magdalene's voice, but not recorded. They know you now, she stared. The player hadn't moved. The tape was still in her hand. The voice was in the room. From the walls, from inside the speaker, she pressed stop. The light overhead flickered. A hairline crack moved across the ceiling tile. Slowly toward her, she took the first tape, played it again. This time, the second voice was louder. Help, please help. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed. Click. Tape skipped. Magdalene again. Some souls do not leave. Some are held. A scream. Not human. Something imitating. Then silence. A whisper beneath it. Her own voice, static warped. Older, you played it. You always do. She dropped the tape. Behind her, the mirror cracked. One more time, the image in it wasn't hers anymore. A girl stood there. 7, maybe 8. Pale, nose bleeding. Lydia remembered her, barely. Eliza Haddon went missing in 1986. Last seen outside the chapel door. They said her mother withdrew her. The ledger had been blank, no attendance slip, no files, but her name was etched into the wood beneath the pew. She checked, still there, fresh. The tape on the floor spun, though it had no battery. It hissed. She prayed for cold. I gave her stillness. Lydia bent, picked it up, pressed eject. It wouldn't open. She dropped it again. It broke open on the floor. Instead of tape reel, photographs. Tiny, burnt at the edges. She picked one up. 12. Children, all staring forward, uniformed, unsmiling. One girl blurred. She flipped it over, handwritten in smudged ink. They still hear the song. Underneath a photo in the cassette shell, a sliver of paper typed. Faded, A, list. 13 names, all redacted, except one. Magdalene, the last line, 13th, added after containment failed. The final name crossed out, then erased. She turned it. In the light, her own name was faintly visible underneath the rub marks. The tape still hissed from the wall. Now, a breath. A second one, then clearly I kept them cold. The chapel lights died. Lydia didn't scream. She reached for the last Tepper one. With her name, she didn't remember recording it, but she knew what it would say. The player opened on its own. The tape slid in. Play clicked. Her own voice came through. They told me it was a dream, but my scars have timestamps. Behind her, a drawer opened. The same mitten from earlier, now paired, laid neatly beside a torn hymn page. The mirror behind the player. Fogged again, no reflection now, only writing, "Do not play alone." She turned no. One in the room, only the hiss, only her voice, now repeating. I kept them quiet, I kept them cold. Nora hadn't planned to open the wall. It was supposed to be a survey, a walkthrough, her third that month. The school had changed owners again, and with each transfer came new plans. Conversion, preservation, demolition, delay. But the hall outside room 3C was thinner than the blueprints claimed, and she'd always measured precisely. That was the first wrong thing. The second was the cold. It leaked through the corridor's right side, like a memory refusing to stay buried. Old, cold, institutional cold, the kind that settles behind your teeth. Nora ran her hand along the wall. It rang differently beneath her palm. The tap went flat halfway down, dull like cement behind plaster. Not drywall, not hollow. She pulled the blueprint from her bag. Folded at the corner, coffee-stained. The original one, signed 1972, drafted in blue ink. 12 classrooms, no anomalies. She checked her notes. The corridor was marked at 4.2 meters wide. Her laser read 3.7. A wall that didn't belong. She dropped to one knee, pried at the seam. The plaster peeled to easily, not crumbling, shedding behind it. Cement, poured flat, seamless. Except for the impressions, HANDPRINTS, 12 of them, each different, each small dot. The skin of the cement looked old, but the prints were sharp, preserved. Fingertips, slightly splayed, most pressed straight in as, if placed, but one was inverted, upside down, deeper, like the hand reached from inside. Nora exhaled, the breath fogged. Even in still air, she pulled out her phone to photograph, but the screen stayed black. A quiet hiss filled the corridor. Not mechanical, organic. A whisper without words. Nora stood to the left. A door creaked open, but no door had been there seconds before. It wasn't on the plan. She looked back at the blueprint. Still no room, just an unbroken corridor, but the door was open beyond it. Darkness, pulsing faintly like breath. She stepped inside. The light followed her in a single stripe, falling through the door crack. No switches, no bulbs, just walls. Smooth cement, uneven, and in the center of the room, a mirror hung too low. Child height, the glass was cloudy. Not from age, but from breath. She leaned in. Her reflection was younger, 17, maybe, wearing a uniform she hadn't worn in decades. A school pin on her collar she didn't recognize. She raised a hand. The reflection didn't. The glass fogged, and words appeared. You were here. The breath wasn't hers. Nora stepped back. A drawer slid open behind her. She turned. A desk now sat in the corner. It hadn't been there. The drawer stuck at first, then opened. Inside, a photo, burnt at the corner. She lifted it. A row of children. 12, standing against a wall that looked just like this one. All unsmiling. Their palms red dot, each holding one hand forward. Nora flipped the photo, scrawled in red pen, before the seal. She checked the wall behind her. The cement still bore the handprints. But now there were 13. One new print. Still wet, dripping, Nora. Turned, the door had closed. No handle. A hairline crack moved across. The far wall, it wasn't there a moment ago. The mirror fogged again. New words, you saw. You didn't tell. She stepped toward it, breathing shallow. And then behind the glass, a flicker of motion, a child. Not visible, not clear, just a suggestion. A shoulder, a shoe, UNLACED. Familiar. A hymn began. Soft, from nowhere, from inside. The walls, she recognized the melody. They used to sing it after recess. The forgotten verses. The ones Sister Magdalene taught only in whispers, away from choir practice. The sound looped, not quite music, not quite memory. She backed away from the mirror on the floor. Cement dust had formed patterns, not footprints, knee prints, as if someone had knelt. 12 times, all facing the wall. Nora reached for her. Blueprint again. The edges were different now. The ink bled, smudged anew. Line had been added in pencil, child's pencil, unruly, crude. A square room, labeled in shaky print, below. She hadn't drawn it. She turned the page. Another blueprint taped over the back. Hidden, no architect's stamp, just one room. No door inside it. A shape, scribbled over and over in graphite until the page tore. A child's silhouette, small dot curled underneath. They didn't scream loud enough. The whisper hissed again, right at her ear, but we heard them. She spun. The wall had cracked wider. From the fissure, a breeze that smelled like wet wool, dried blood and dust that had waited too long, and beneath it breathing, not air breath, she reached out. Her hand hovered over the newest print. Still, wet. She pressed her fingers to it, not for evidence, for memory. The cement burned cold. Her hand came away, dry but coated in grey. Like ash, she turned back to the mirror. Her reflection now held the burnt photo, but the children were gone. Only the wall remained. 13 handprints, one still moving. She dropped the photo. The cement behind her groaned, a sound from inside the wall, not movement, shifting, settling, or turning. She didn't know if it was toward her or away. The hymn played again, different now, slower, fragmented. Only the last line repeated, "We kneel to be forgotten." She reached for her phone again. This time, it lit only the camera. It was already recording. The screen showed her but slightly off-center. Someone else stood behind her, too close. She turned. Nothing. The wall was smooth, but the mirror now reflected. The figure, still watching. A child in a uniform, hands red, eyes grayed over like static. The mirror, FOGGED. One word, written by no breath she could name, confess. She looked down. The blueprint had changed again. The below room now connected to room 3C, through a hand-drawn shaft. It wasn't a vent, not a stairwell. It was labeled in pencil, hold. She flipped the page. The names were back. 13 lines, all redacted, but one her own. The others smudged, as if erased with too much pressure, but one just faint, Listle read. Carla Dent, DNR, her friend, vanished in 6th grade. They told them she'd transferred. The calendar said it happened in spring, but Nora's notebook still had Carla. March 2nd, scrawled in the margin. Snow was on the ground that week. She remembered the sound of wet shoes, echoing down the hall. Carla had said, Don't look back until they stop asking your name. Nora hadn't looked back until now. The cement wall exhaled. A final breath. The cracks sealed. The 13th handprint dried before her eyes. She heard a child laugh once. Not joy, not cruelty. Permission. A drawer opened behind her. It hadn't existed before, inside, the original blueprint. But this one, dash older, hand dash, drawn, no. Date dot, one room circled, labeled in red ink. They are still kneeling. The last note scribbled in the margin. Built over them doesn't mean without them. Nora held it in both hands. The cement groaned again, deep inside. And from the mirror, once more, in a child's whisper, you were here, the photo was wrong. That's what stopped Ma. Not the paper quality, it was the right matte type, the kind they used in the 90s. Not the students, they were all familiar. Most of them names she could still recall in a breathless string. Jody, Alex, Corinne, May, Trevor, Shannon, and there. Him again, front row, left of center, same haircut, same striped collar, same chipped front tooth. Gap-toothed, timeless. Smiling just a little too long after the shutter. Maren had sorted 9. Class photos that afternoon. He was in all of them. Not just 1 year, all 3, grades 4 through 6. The problem was, he wasn't enrolled. No file. No health form. No registration card in the district archive. And she'd checked twice. She leaned in, fingertip tracing the outline of his shoulder. He was holding someone's hand, but no one stood beside him. Just a blur, a suggestion of skin and sleeve, cropped or dissolved. She flipped the photo. Spring 1996. Room 2, and no list of names. No teacher signature. The timestamp in the corner. Read. March 21st, 2026. Her throat closed. She checked again. Not 96. 20-20-6. She blinked hard. Looked back. Still 2026. Still that grin. Still the boy. She turned on the overhead light in the records room. It flickered twice before stabilizing. Old bulbs, probably. Or maybe the power grid didn't like the lower levels. This floor hadn't been mapped in the new building plans. Not officially. She unrolled the ledger from the locked drawer. The one with Oreg, enrolled pending, stamped in faded ink. Alphabetical. Nothing between Brenner, Liam, and Calder, June. But tucked just behind that page, a note she didn't remember placing. Thin paper, graphite, a child's print. The handwriting trembled, spaced too evenly. He's not new, just not named. Maren folded it quickly and put it in her pocket without meaning to. It felt warm against her chest, like it had waited to be held. The lights dimmed again. She turned reflex, not curiosity. A filing drawer was open. She hadn't opened it. The brass label was blank, but the folders inside weren't. She reached for the first, a redacted transfer request. Date stamped, unknown. Name field, blank. But in the margin, something had been scratched, then erased. She angled it under the light, pressed gently. A single word, just visible in pressure tracers. Hand. The breath in the room changed. Something colder. Not winter. Absent, she looked up. The air had fogged in front of the mirror, but she hadn't. Breathed out. She moved closer. The mirror wasn't hers. It didn't reflect this year, or this light, or this room. It reflected the corridor outside room to a early morning sunlight through a cracked door. Children lining up. Quiet, blurry. Then he walked into frame. The boy, same shirt, same grin. He paused, looked directly into the mirror. Into her, the fog on the surface curled inward. Words appeared. Child scrawled in breath condensation. You let him in. She touched the glass. It was warm from the other side. Behind her, a soft knock echoed through the floorboards. Then again, rhythmic. Small knuckles. She left the records room. The hallway stretched longer than it should have. The lights at the far end were dim. The linoleum buzzed faintly under her shoes like something waited behind it. She turned the corner, room, to a dot. The door was ajar, but the classroom had been closed since the fire in '98. The one no one wrote up, the one that only lived in whisper and uneven calendars. She stepped inside. Dust lay across the desks in a perfect pattern undisturbed. All but one dot second row. Left side, the chair there was pulled out slightly. Not empty. A single child's shoe rested beneath it. Old canvas, split sole, mud-crusted. She bent to pick it up. Inside, something rattled. A Polaroid. She held it up. Another class photo. Same backdrop. Same uneven spacing. The boy, again. Same grin. This time, standing slightly apart. Not touching anyone, but one child beside him. Mid-turn, the Polaroid had no note on the back. Only a fingerprint. Pressed in ash dot, she set it down from the far corner of the room. A whisper, they said I was already counted. She didn't look. The chalkboard behind her shifted. Not writing text. She turned. New chalk dust had risen. A name, written faintly. Over and over in uneven lines. And, no full name. Just the conjunction. As if he was always meant to be added, but never identified. She stepped forward. Her foot hit something. A desk drawer, it slid open. Inside, a burnt photo. Only smoke and outline remained. She could make out 3 children, all turned inward, heads tilted, hands reaching, and in the center, empty space, shaped like a boy. Marin took the photo, flipped it. A line was scrawled across the back in pencil. If they forget your name, you don't have to leave. The lights buzzed louder now. The mirror in the corner, cracked, hairline spreading. Her reflection blinked. The boy stood beside her. She hadn't seen him appear. She turned, no one, but the chair behind her rocked. Slightly, she stepped backward. The door was closed now, not locked, missing only. A wall remained. She pressed the blueprint flat against a desk. No room to a listed, just a narrow storage wing labeled, "Do not access." She folded the page in the silence. Another voice layered behind the hum, a phrase on repeat, soft, grainy. You saw him. You saw him. She didn't recognize the voice until it became hers. Old tape warping itself. Her own voice saying, again, he was holding someone's hand. The desk drawer creaked open again. New item inside. A mirror, small, child-sized. The kind kept in lunchboxes or back pockets. She lifted it. It reflected the hallway, but not the hallway now. The hallway next year. She could tell by the color of the new tiles. Contractors hadn't even ordered them yet. Children pass by, unaware. No sound, and in the center of them, the boy, still grinning, still small, still out of time. He paused again, looked into the mirror, tilted his head, raised his hand, pressed his palm against the other side. Her fingers burned cold. She dropped the mirror. The glass didn't break, but the reflection held, frozen, and the boy's face, now no longer smiling, just watching. A breath fogged on the floor beside her. But she hadn't exhaled. She turned, A camera sat in the desk chair now. Old, flash dash ready, one photo waiting. She pulled it, the Polaroid. Developed instantly. The boy, standing in the center of the records room. Timestamp at the bottom, :04, 12, 22, 6, a year from now. A day she hadn't lived yet, and beneath the photo, faintly scrawled, I haven't aged a day. She woke again in the wrong part of the room. This time, her bed faced the radiator. Last night, she remembered, it had faced the mirror. The night before that, the door. Every morning she made a mark on the underside of the frame with the back of a spoon, and every morning the position changed, but the mark remained. Ada sat up slowly. The air was warm, too warm, almost humid, like someone had just exhaled into her mouth while she slept. The wall behind her pulsed slightly with heat, not from the radiator. That hadn't worked in years. The school had been converted into a care facility after the district dissolved. Transitional housing, the paperwork said, but the doors still had room numbers carved beneath the paint. She was in 4D, or what used to be called that. She hadn't signed a lease. There was no key, just a list of rules posted outside the room, typed in black ribbon on sun-bleached paper. No singing after lights out. Nitrogen monoxide visitors without record. Do not touch the mirror. No signature, no seal, no date, just her name at the bottom. Typed, slightly smudged. Ada Cresswell, hold until resolved. She crossed to the window. The blinds were stuck half open. The sun was too bright, but not warm, like it had forgotten how to land. She watched it flicker against the cracked hallway door. Light never moved like that unless someone walked past. But she hadn't heard footsteps, only humming, a low, tuneless rise and fall. Off-key, familiar. She turned toward the radiator. Nothing visible, but the sound lingered. She stepped back. Her heel struck something. A drawer open. She hadn't opened it. It was empty last night. She was certain now. A hymn page, torn, folded. She unfolded it. Page 47. O Lamb, most still she remembered the tune. It was sung only once a year before. Evaluations. The children were made to hum it alone, one at a time, facing the wall. Her mother had said it was normal. All schools have their traditions. But this verse hadn't been printed before. It was handwritten in pencil at the bottom. If you were seen, become still. If you were heard, become sweet. She dropped it. A small laugh echoed through the radiator, childlike, but too breathy, like someone trying to remember how to laugh with lungs. She moved to the mirror, cracked at the corner, webbed. Her reflection blinked, but not with her. Ada froze. The glass fogged slightly. She hadn't breathed. Words emerged in the mist. You hum. In your sleep. She stepped back. A handprint bloomed on the glass. Small left hand. Slightly tilted. It hadn't been there before. She opened the closet, unsure why. Inside, a child's shoe, unlaced, damp, mud, clung to the tread. She touched it. The closet door slammed shut. She turned. Her bed had moved. Again now pressed against the mirror, as if waiting for her to lie back down and forget. A sound dripped behind the wall. Not water, thicker. She listened. It wasn't the pipes. The pipes had been sealed years ago. The building plan confirmed it, but she'd stopped trusting. Plans. She found her bag. Pulled out the blueprint she'd kept since intake. Folded 6 times. Original stamp, District 3 Archive, hold, room for D, was listed. So was the hallway, but not the space behind her wall. An extra rectangle had been drawn in black pen, not official, crooked. A room behind the mirror, labeled RSPONSE. She stared. Something scratched at the inside of the mirror. Faint, not. Fingernails dash knuckles. She turned to the door. The handle had vanished. The frame was seamless. She didn't remember hearing it. Close, she called out. Once her voice echoed. Too many times. Not through the air, through rooms, as if passed from mouth to mouth behind the walls. The radiator hissed. Then a new sound. Ada, spoken softly, unsure. Her sister's voice. But her sister had never come here. Not once. Ada stepped closer to the vent. It's me. Let me in. She didn't answer. Her sister had been buried 3 years ago. Cement plot. Closed casket. Missing teeth. The radiator rattled. Then silence. Then humming. The school anthem. Slower now. Off key. Broken. The pipe beneath her feet was warm. She stepped away. Drip a sound beneath the floor. She lifted the edge of the rug. Nothing. Then another drip. She followed it to the corner. Behind the desk. Something gleamed. A puddle, viscous, red dot. It glistened like syrup. Dark and thick. It had pooled slowly, spelling something in CURSIVE. She stepped forward. The loops of the letters still forming, finishing themselves as she watched. Cresswell. The handwriting matched the page from the hymn dot. She reached toward it. The mirror fogged. Again, a face appeared, not hers. A girl, pale, mouth open, no sound. She mouthed something, 3 words. Over and over. You stayed too long. A second handprint joined the first. Then a third. The mirror cracked again. Not spidering, fracturing. The shoe from the closet had moved to the middle of the room, pointed toward. Her dot from behind the wall. The humming returned. Now in rhythm, 12 voices, children repeating the verse. If you are seen, become still. If you are heard, become sweet. Ada closed her eyes. She remembered the classroom, Sister Magdalene's breath behind her ear. She remembered being told not to speak, not to move. Not even when the door locked. She remembered her sister crying on the other side. They won't forget you, she'd whispered. But they had. The drawer opened again, inside. A burnt photo. She lifted it. Children lined up, 12. One turned toward the camera. Gap, toothed, smiling, holding her hand. But she was missing from the frame. Only her shadow remained. She turned it over, blank, except a child's scrawl. Room 4D kept warm. Behind her, the radiator WHINED. Then something exhaled. She stepped back. Her foot hit the puddle. It was warm, slick. The cursive had finished forming. Now it read, Ada Cresswell returned. The mirror shattered, but no shards fell. Only the wall behind it crumbled. Not cement, not drywall, fabric, soft, padded, and stitched to the Centaura hymn page. Sewn in with red thread. She tore it down. On the back, a photo. She and her sister, matching uniforms, standing outside for DI, the date at the bottom, next year, and behind them light through a cracked door, and a figure inside the room. Seen, small, hand. Outstretched, smiling. Ada turned to the wall, placed her palm beside the others, and whispered, If I'm heard, I'll become sweet. The clocks made her nervous. They were everywhere, now drawn in pencil, in pen, sometimes smeared in what might have bin lipstick, margins, file folders. The underside of her desk, always the same time, 12:13. Every hand stuck, every tick silenced. Dr. Lyra Glenn had stopped trying to ask her patient why. It didn't matter, not anymore. The girl Marla, according to one foreman Miri on another, hadn't spoken since session 4. The tapes from their interviews now only caught hissing, like something humming into the microphone from too close, too wet. Leora flipped to the final page of the intake notes. The handwriting changed halfway down. Her own, sloping cursive fractured into loops that resembled the girl's worksheets. Lowercase e's backward, eyes dotted with hollow circles. She didn't remember writing it, just 2 lines. She didn't forget. They made her, and then below it, shakier. The clocks are mouths. Lyra set the clipboard aside. Her chair scraped louder than it should have. This office was supposed to be soundproof institutional level acoustic reinforcement. That's what the order had said when they reassigned her to this wing. But now she could hear dripping through the walls. Soft, in time with her heartbeat. Session 8 was unfinished. The recorder blinked in red. She hadn't pressed play, but it blinked. Anyway, the girl hadn't shown up, except her. Coat was in the chair, still warm. The lining stained at the cuff, rust-colored, smelled like chalk, and something sweet. Lyra stood the mirror across the room, FOGGAD. She didn't exhale slowly, with no hands. Touching it, a word appeared. Again, she walked to the cabinet. It took 3 tries to find the right drawer. It wasn't labeled. It hadn't existed last week. Inside, patient file, F2211-R name, redacted, age, unknown, status, retained, photograph missing, except there was something glued into the corner. Not a photo, a child's drawing, crayons, heavy-handed, scribbled violently, a bed, a face beneath it, eyes open, and a clock beside the bed, broken in half. Both sides read 12:13. She closed the drawer. It didn't latch. The room behind the wall let out a low groan. There was no room behind that wall. She had checked the floor plans the day she arrived. But the newest blueprint, the one slid under her door last night, showed a narrow space there. No number, no code, just a note in shaky blue ink. Whispers, "Don't echo in here." She returned to her desk. The clipboard was gone. In its place, a burnt photo, edges singed black. The image warped by heat. 12 children, 11 facing forward. One turned slightly, as if caught mid-step. That one held someone's hand. No one was there. She flipped it over. No names, just a time. Scribbled twice. 12:13, start. 12:13, STLL. The heater clicked on, except the switch was off. From the vent, humming, a hymn. Lyra knew it. Page 22. In the chapel songbook, "Oh stay thy hand." The melody was wrong. Too slow. The last note held too long. A drawer in the far wall opened. It hadn't been there before. She crossed the room. Inside, a single shoe, child's size, red canvas, water dash damaged. Underneath it, a folded page from a workbook. Her handwriting at the top, the girl's name below. Miri or Marla. The exercise asked, "What do you remember about yesterday?" The answer box was empty except for a drawing. 12 clocks. Each stuck at 12:13, each with a mouth instead of hands. Inside the largest mouth, a mirror. She turned the page. There was no back, only ink bleeding through. marks she hadn't seen on the front, a name written over and over again, but each one blurred at the last letter, as if someone had tried to finish it with the wrong hand. A noise scraped behind the wall, like furniture. Dragging slowly across cement, she approached the mirror. A handprint appeared, smaller than hers. Then another, upside down, and then a breath fogged from the inside. 3 words formed. They moved her. Lyra stepped back. The door creaked open. No one entered. But something had changed. The clock above the frame now ticked. It had been broken since she arrived. She looked, both hands stuck at 12:13. She turned. Her desk chair was occupied now. A figure sat slouched forward, hair over the face, arms limp, the coat from earlier now worn. Lyra approached. The figure looked up. It was her, younger, 15 maybe, eyes hollow, mouth smiling too wide. She whispered something. Lyra leaned closer. The girl's voice came from behind the mirror. You didn't forget. You let them remember. The mirror cracked. Hairline fracture, slow. It crawled downward like a vein. She blinked. The chair was empty, but the coat still held shape. The ticking stopped. A new note sat on her desk, typed, short, blunt, session, complete, record final thought. But she hadn't typed it. The cursor blinked on the screen. She reached for the keyboard, but her hands wouldn't move. The mirror fogged again. One last image. A room she didn't recognize. A hallway light flickering through a cracked door. A child's face turned to the glass, smiling, holding a drawing. 12 clocks dot, each with her name. Written inside, the screen went black, and then text appeared. On its own, patient has accepted containment. Temporal fixation successful. Memory compliant. Dr. L. Glenn deceased. File closed 1997. She stared, then beneath that, a new signature appeared. Handwritten, dot looped like a child's. Marla or Miri. And a single line scrawled in the corner. I didn't forget. They made me. They told Mara the chapel had been sealed for asbestos, and yet the key still worked. It turned with no resistance, as if the lock had been kept warm. The door sighed open, not loud, not reluctant, a kind of permission. The hallway behind her, full of echo and wet floor signs, became distant as she crossed the threshold. It felt like she was walking into something held that the choir loft hadn't changed. High, vaulted ceiling, cracked skylight above the pews. The split-glass window of St. Agnes's, rubbed smooth by weather and old fingers. The air was thick with incense rot, old breath, and a sweetness that didn't belong. Like ammonia, if it had learned how to cry. The pew cushions had been stripped. The altar cloth mildewed, half buried under dust. But the hymnals were still stacked where they used to be. Blue covers, page corners, dog-eared. She picked one up, inside. A torn page. Page 38. Oh, gentle return, she remembered that one. They weren't supposed to sing it unless someone didn't come back from break. A private ritual. The teacher would hum it once. The class would hum it back. If a name wasn't spoken, it wasn't counted. At the back of the hymnal, something had been scratched in with the corner of a paperclip, down through the voice. Mara stepped onto the choir platform. The floor creaked under her weight. Too soft, she dropped to her knees, brushing away dust. The boards had warped slightly, bowing, inward centered around a missing slat, no larger than a shoebox, just wide enough for her hand. She lifted the panel. It broke off in her grip. Below, darkness, not black just, too still to reflect. She clicked on her phone light and held it low, 6 feet down. Maybe 7, wooden walls. Beneath the chapel, sunk like a cellar, but too narrow to stand in. The beam supports were older than the building. Too old. Someone had etched symbols into them childlike, crosses and looping numbers, and in the center of that space, a circle of toys, small, ragged, placed carefully, a headless doll, a wind-up horse, melted on one side, a stuffed dog with no legs, and in the exact center, a plush rabbit, upright, still clean. Every toy had no eyes, not torn out, removed, one. At a time, Mara's hand trembled. She lowered her phone further. The beam of light caught on something glinting. A shard of mirror propped against the far wall. It didn't reflect her face. It reflected the choir. Room-empty. She leaned closer. Her breath fogged it. Even from above, the mirror fogged back. Words formed across it in flickering breath. We're not gone. A drawer slid open behind her, but there were no drawers in the chapel. She turned too quickly. Her phone slipped from her grip, landing on the floor beside the hatch. Light down, darkness returned. She fumbled for it. When she lifted it, the screen was cracked. A new photo had appeared. Not taken. Stored. The toys. Same circle, but now there were 13. One was new, a handkerchief bunny, sewn shut, a child's shoe tied around its neck. Like a collar, she flipped the phone, camera still open, pointed behind her in the chapel mirror. A second figure stood, small, holding something. She turned, nothing. Only St. Agnes and the door now. Slightly ajar, light slicing in sideways. No wind, and yet pages from the hymnals were flipping, like fingers were moving through them. Page by page, she approached the mirror. It was fogged again. You heard us. The mirror cracked. Hairline, it moved. She looked back down through the hole. One of the toys had moved. The rabbit now faced her. Its ears were up and its eyes were back. 2 buttons, not sewn, pressed, human to human. Glassy and wrong and recent. She reached toward it. She didn't know why. The floor creaked beneath her knee, not from weight, from movement below. A soft sound, like whispering through a vent. One word, repeating, low, fragile. Return, return, return. She recoiled. Something wet dripped from the rafters above her. She looked up. No leak, only dust and splinter. But the drip continued, from nowhere, from everywhere. She wiped her hand, red sticky. The scent of ammonia deepened. A page from the hymnal floated past her feet. It was page 38 again. But this time, the lyrics had changed. Line for now read, the floor remembers what the roll forgot. A shadow passed the cracked skylight, too fast, too small, too direct. She turned. Back toward the hatch. Something had climbed out. The circle of toys was broken. The rabbit was gone, but a faint trail had been left. Little dots, thick. Red, they led to the back pew. She followed them. Her shoes stuck slightly with each step, the sweet scent rising. Each pew she passed bore the marked handprints, too low, too precise. One handprint was upside down. Reaching up from beneath, she reached the final pew. A burnt photo sat on the cushion. Edges curled, center intact. 13 children in choir robes. 12 facing forward. 1 turned, grinning. A hand rested in hers, invisible but felt. Behind them, Mara, but younger, taller than she'd been at that age. And smiling, she flipped the photo. A note scrawled in looping ink. they sang us inward. Behind her, the mirror cracked again. Fully now, a chunk fell, striking the floor but not shattering. On its back, a note stuck with aged tape, faded district letterhead. Do not remove panel floor archive intact. Beneath that, another hand had written, rot beneath is not the same as gone. Mara stepped toward the altar. The floorboards swelled as she passed. Something sighed from beneath them, like a throat under pressure. The hatch yawned wider. The toys were gone, but one remained at the center. The rabbit now sitting on the chapel steps. Its button eyes looked upward, and in its seams hair, stitched roughly human, some dark, some blonde, one strand red. She bent Dot. Her fingers hovered just over the fur. It twitched, then settled. She lifted it gently. A breath fogged the mirror again. Final words, etched in condensation. They were here. They are not gone. And beneath her feet a hum. 12 voices, out of sync. Off key. Children. Beneath the hymn, singing the words she had forgotten. Singing her name. Mara, softly, then return. She clutched the rabbit to her chest, and the mirror cracked one final time. No one knew who unlocked the fence. The demolition crew had arrived at 4 a.m. Sharp contractors with cold coffee, caution tape, and a mandate signed in 6 places. Final structure on the district lot, the bell tower of St. Drusella's, 37 feet tall. Sealed since 76. Faint burn marks still rimmed the base where the annex had caught fire. Black veins spreading into stone. The fire hadn't reached the tower itself. The heat had, and something else. They said it was slated for full removal by sunrise. They never made it past prep at 4:41 a.m. Lennox, the youngest of the 3, noticed something off. He'd walked the tower perimeter once already, but now the padlock on the bell tower door lay open. Still warm, the air from the crack in the stone smelled of rust and wet wool. He told no one, only opened the door and stepped inside. The others didn't hear the bell, but he did. Once low, slurred, not rung, dragged. Inside, it was colder, not from wind. There were no windows, no airflow, just stone, raw and pocked, rising around him like a throat trying to forget what it had swallowed. The staircase was wood, each step older than the last. The top ones looked carved by hand. Nails shone faintly in the dark. Most were bent upward. He climbed slowly. The bell chamber waited at the top. A hollow room, dust in stalactite clusters. Wall joints split wide, and in the center, the bell, still. Hung. Still roped, still watching. He approached. His breath made fog. In the dry air, he reached out without meaning to. Touched the rope. It felt wet, not damp, coated. His hand came away dark, faintly sticky from the far corner. Something shifted. He turned. A mirror leaned against the far wall. Warped, cracked, no frame. It reflected not the bell-butter classroom. Desks too close together. Children facing forward. No one moving. One turned, slowly. A boy, small, grinning, gab-toothed. He raised his hand. The mirror, FOGGED. Words bloomed across the surface. You shouldn't be up here. Lennox backed away. A scratching noise followed, low, stone on stone, not loud, not fast. Climbing from below, he stepped to the stairs, listened. One knock, then one knock, then another, then 3 in a row. Steady, deliberate footsteps, too light for an adult, too precise for random. He descended, one step. The stair groaned. Beneath him, the scratching. Paused, he waited. Nothing then. Dash closer. Now, higher pitch. Nails on grain. As if something was being pulled upward by its hands. Lennox turned back to the mirror. The boy was gone. Only the classroom now, empty except for one chair. Turned to face the wall. A hymn book open on the floor beside it. He stared then from behind the wall, a voice. Faint, childlike, still here. The bell moved. Only slightly. Not swung, nudged, as if someone small had pressed their head to it. From underneath, a hairline crack appeared across its base. It hadn't been there before. Lennox turned to leave. But the stairs were different now. Shorter, steeper, twisting not down but inward. A loop, a spine. He took one step. The floor flexed. The air grew warmer. He descended further, but the light never changed. No matter how far he walked, the stairs returned to the same level, the same landing, the same crack in the wall at the base of the crack. Something blinked. A small eye, then vanished. He dropped to one knee, peered in. A drawer sat behind the stone, too deep inside to belong. He reached, pulled it open. Inside, a burnt photo, 12 children. Standing in a scenic around a bell, not in a tower, but in a classroom. No adults, only small hands. Reaching toward the rope. One child stood to the side, back, turned, scratching something on the wall. Lennox flipped the photo, blank, then dash, as he watched. Words appeared, not ink dot impression, as if someone was still writing from the other side. You heard the bell too. He dropped the photo, a clanging sound from above, not metal, not impact. Waking, he ran. The stairs no longer resisted, each step faster, sharper, as if the tower wanted him to descend now. The front door was open. He passed through it too quickly. Lungs ragged, chest humming. The air outside was colder. The other crew members stood by the van, confused. What the hell happened? One of them asked. Lennox couldn't speak. He turned to look up the tower's bell. Windows stared down, empty. The bell was no longer there. Only a rope, swinging gently. A new sound echoed from inside, like fingers. Brushing stone, from above, and then the bell rang again. Wrong dot, 2 tones. Dot, overlapped, warped. One of the crew members laughed nervously. That wasn't part of the system, right? Lennox didn't answer. His phone buzzed. A new image, unopened. No sender. He clicked at photo. The bell tower, taken from above, from inside, looking down. A boy stood beneath it, gap-toothed, waving. Lennox looked at the van. One rear door was ajar. He walked over. The others stayed frozen. Inside, nothing out of place, except for the window. Condensation fogged across the inside of the glass. His breath caught. Handprint, small. Pressed from within, 5 fingers. Nails long, one upside down, as if the hand had reached up. He stepped back. The bell rang again, fainter, from inside the van, and behind the fogged glass words began to appear. It's not coming down, and beneath it, freshly etched with a fingernail, it's coming back. They said 12 children vanished, but today there were 13 hooks. Ada discovered them in the corridor. Outside the old coachroom hooks, embedded in the wall where none had been before. Thin metal crescents, polished smooth, each spaced at child shoulder height. Numbers etched beneath. 1 through 13. Only 12 names had ever been recorded. The last remained blank. She traced her finger across hook 12. Mara Cresswell. A redacted file lay pinned beneath it. Beneath 12, hook 13 held nothing. Until now. The coatroom door hung open, light spilling out in a thin beam from the cracked door at its far end. Light that should have moved with wind. She held still. The air tasted of dust and old bread. A hymn, half remembered, whispered in. The silence she stepped inside. 12 coats swayed on their hooks, but hook 13. Empty, she had seen them in the archives. School ledgers listing 12 entry points, but 13 exits. Institutional silence had blanked that, erased, redacted. She hadn't believed it until now. She stayed in the doorframe. The coats were warm, not fabric horn racent, damp at the collar. Steam curled in the cold air. A child's shoe lay under hook 9. Canvas, faded green, laces undone. Time-stamped it, 3rd grade, lived through trauma. Her breath fogged the glass pane in the coatroom's cracked door window. Though she hadn't exhaled. You came back, the silence murmured. It wasn't a door, not fully, just a crack. From somewhere else, breath fog. On glass where no one stood, Ada approached hook 13. She had measured. This one sat slightly off, not center. One hook further down the corridor. It should have matched the rest, but didn't. A hairline crack spiraled above it, moving. Like a breath pushed through plaster. Her fingertip pressed the cold metal. A coat dropped. It fell like stone. She picked it up. Heavy wool, wet at the sleeves. Too heavy, too large. The grey-green was unfamiliar. The collar still dripped onto the tile dot inside the pocket. A hymn torn. From a book, page 14. Lines underlined. When voices fade, the child remains. Beneath, someone had written, "For the lost." She slipped the coat on. It hung too long. Covered her frame awkwardly. She didn't feel like herself. The door cracked behind her. Light spilled in patterns. She turned. No one. The coat swayed again. Hooked creaked. One coat leaning into another. As if moved by a child's hand. She walked among them. Each coat a name. A missing face. Silence becomes complicity. Trust becomes guilt. To wear a coat was to witness Dot at hook 6. Her hand brushed. A name tag pinned there. Metal, rusted, etched, Tess Rivers. But coat was for 3rd grade girl. Tess had left in 79. Why was the name still here? She touched it. Coat slid off the hook itself, leaving the tag swinging. She lifted it, touched letters, mud cold. A drawer hanged open below the coat rack. A drawer that shouldn't exist. She looked down, part of an old register, stained. Underlined name. Ada Cresswell, still registered. Then blank line after dot hook 13 trembled. She looked back up. The coatroom lights flickered. They had been off, but suddenly overhead flicked twice. She hadn't moved the switch. A light through a cracked door, but only falling on hook 13. The coat swung slightly toward her soft whisper from behind. "It's your turn." It came through the vent near the ceiling. Forgotten basements, corrupted archives, institutional guilt echoing in empty space. Her heart hammered. She stepped. 213, coat still in hand. Her reflection in the glass behind the coats showed more than it should. The mirror that reflects a year that hasn't happened. Ada's reflection was younger, 10, wearing that coat. Same damp folds. She in 3rd grade again. In 20 years ago, she blinked. Mirror, fogged, even though she held her breath. Words appeared, stay. The hymn, Taunche, pulled it from the pocket, opened it. Lines beneath for the lost new ink. It fits you, fingers trembled. She heard children humming the anthem. A loop, emotional echo. The same 12 voices, plus one more. Silence becomes observation. Memory becomes manipulation. She hung the coat on hook 13. Instantly, 13 coats aligned. Numbered, complete. A handprint appeared on the glass pane of the door small. Damp, thumb out. Children's handprint that wasn't there. Inside her pocket, the hymn page warmed. Red lines blurred. The words disappeared, then reappeared as 3. New lines. It's your turn to stay in for recess. The coat tags rattled. The doorway crack sealed itself, no light. No exit, her reflection smiled. Gap dash toothed dot. And from behind the wall, in 12 soft voices plus one. It's your turn. It's your turn to stay in for recess. They told her the sublevel didn't exist, that the blueprints ended at B2, that the ledger floor plans were misprints, that the fire in 1981 had collapsed the old hallway. But Mira knew. The scar behind her left ear pulsed when she stood near the wall under the South Bell stairwell. The plaster there hummed not with sound, but with presence. She had been 5 the first time she dreamed of the room. It had no door, no light, but warmth, always warmth. Breath in the walls. Names carved with fingernails. One of them hers. She hadn't known how to spell it then. Now, decades later, with her archive badge still clipped to her chest and her boots soaked from the December thaw, she returned, not to prove, not to search, but to listen. She pressed her palm flat to the wall behind the rusted fire hose cabinet. It pulsed, the paint flaked in rings. Her breath fogged the air before her, though the hall remained warm. And then, like soft breath behind her, she heard it again. We remember you. She didn't flinch. Instead, she unhooked the cabinets. Frame and found, not metal or pipe behind, but wood, old, soft with rot. A hairline crack ran across it like a vein. She pried at it gently. The crack widened not from her touch, but from within. The wall flexed inward like breath being held. Then, release, and the gap yawned open. No hinges, no threshold, just a slit, a drawer that shouldn't exist. Inside, space, air stale with memory, blackness that held shape. She stepped in. The floor dipped slightly, carpetless, dirt-packed. Ceiling low, but warm and not silent. The room breathed. On each wall, the carvings, hundreds of names. Shallow at first, then deeper, etched letters where fingernails had broken. The scratches were wet, some still beading with red. One set spelled Talia twice, the second time in reverse. Some were childlike loops. One name pulsed faintly, fresh her own dot, Myra, dot, still writing itself. She turned in place. The room had no light source, yet she saw the drawings, spirals, stick figures, a mirror with no reflection, a mirror that showed a hallway overgrown with ivy, a date in the corner, 2026, a year that hadn't happened, near the far wall, a child's shoe, soft pink, laced and placed perfectly straight. Under it, a hymn torn from the school's chapel hymnal, page folded into quarters, scribbled across, the top in red, the ones who stayed. The lyrics beneath were crossed out. Scribbled replacements. When the walls forget, the names will wake. Mira picked it up, warm, as if someone had set it down only moments ago. The shoe was damp. Her fingers trembled. She turned, and the mirror on the far wall no longer reflected. Instead, it watched, not her, but something behind her, something smaller, breathing. "Stay," said a whisper. It came not from behind her, but from the carved names on the wall. The word echoed. From within them, from the mouths of each forgotten child. A burnt photo lay beside the shoe now. She hadn't seen it before. Curled at the edge, image barely visible. 12 children, lined in 2 rows. Their uniforms misaligned. A 13th face stood at the edge, blurred. She stared. The face looked like hers. The hymn page in her hand, stiffened, turned brittle. She opened it fully. The inside was hollowed outer page turned into a pocket. Inside, a mirror shard. It reflected her eyes, but not the rest of her face, and carved into the glass in etching too fine to be written. By a human hand, "You were here before." She turned. There was no exit, no doorway back. Just the mirror, just the names, just the warmth of things that should not breathe. The names behind her shifted, one scratched letter at a time. Mira K. Mirakeen. Mirakeen still here. She ran, a hand over it, warm, soft. The wall moved under her touch like skin. There were fingerprints beneath hers, older, pressed deep. A rusted drawer near the wall clicked open. She hadn't seen it before. Inside, a single page, an old ledger, the column, withdrawn, dozens of redacted lines, except one unblurred, still wet in ink. Keen, Myra, dismissed. Reason, repetitive presence. She backed away. The hymn page flared in her hand. Her name reappeared at the top. Overwritten dot, "We remember. We remember. We remember you." The room closed in. Breath fog gathered on the mirror. Not hers, behind her. A small handprint appeared upside down. And then a second, and a third, each smaller than the last dot, from inside the wall, a faint scratching. Nails on stone. Writing itself. Then the mirror flickered again. A photograph now. Her as a child, sitting on the floor of this very room, holding the shoe. No entrance, no exit, just her and others. All blurred, all smiling too wide. She dropped the shard. It didn't fall. It hovered lightless and then sank into the floor like breath held too long. From all around her, the air exhaled. The walls moved. The carvings pulsed. A breath fogged the space before her, and the whisper again softer now, so close it didn't feel like sound. "We remember you." The last thing she saw was her name, still writing, still wet, still finishing itself, not scratched in, still being called.